Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third session of the 15th House of Representatives. This is an emergency special session that I have called tonight in order to open the House floor to debate upon the recent issue of the Supreme Court, I guess, purge you can call it, and also the ruling that they handed down. So, let's get started. I now call this session into order, and would any representative like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Nobody wants to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Also, it's good how nobody stood up when we were saying the pledge.
I read.
Very, very classic. Anyways, I'd like all representatives to join me in a moment of silence now. Okay, moving right along. Would the clerk please call the roll for attendance?
Representative Haysbert.
C. Present.
Representative Combatant. Representative Combatant.
He's in here, but he has his mic muted.
Present.
Alright, and also, just for the record, if you're typing, please type in the session discussion. Alright, Representative Combatant is present. Representative Dr. Gatsby.
Present.
Representative Rockefeller.
Nelson Rockefeller.
Representative Rockefeller is present. Representative Weeb.
Present.
Representative Rockwell.
Present.
Representative Richmond. Representative Richmond is absent.
The chair would like to make a note that Representative Richmond has... Wait, never mind.
Alright. Representative Ravetti. Representative Ravetti is absent. Representative Vermillion. Representative Vermillion is absent. Representative Joseph Jr. Representative Joseph Jr.
He's here, but he's also typing.
Wait for him to type.
A second.
Just
There we go.
just type present. That's all you gotta do. Just type present.
Come on, Mike. Come on, Mike. I know you can do it.
You're holding us up. Come on, Mike.
Mike!
Just type it. Type present. Yeah,
Mike,
I can see you, Mike, but you gotta type present. There you go.
There we go. Thank you, Mike.
It took a while, but Representative Joseph Jr. is present. Representative Floheed.
Present.
Representative Raykid.
Present.
Okay.
Representative Raykid is absent.
Yes.
Representative McTavish.
Here.
Representative Sir Tome the Philkov.
Well, that's a name.
Representative Philkov is absent, and Representative Anubis. Representative Anubis is absent. It appears with 9 present and... Shit, I'm not good at math. 6 absent. There is a quorum present.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
Liberal Democrat.
Okay, good.
Mm-hmm.
Chair would like Representative Haysbert to please remain silent, and if he wishes the floor, he need only ask at an appropriate time. Thank you.
Sorry, I was just on the phone.
Okay. Well, there's a little button on your Discord called mute. You can try pressing that, so you're not, interrupting the session. Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Got it. Anyways, we will now move on to the presentation and voting of the agenda. Now, as this is not a legislative session, meaning that we are not voting on anything, this is just a discussion session, I feel that we can very quickly pass our agenda for today, which is just going to be the discussion of the recent purging of the Supreme Court and whether or not the three justices who cited the majority opinion of the court in last night's ruling have violated their good behavior clause in the Constitution and whether or not they should be impeached. Will the clerk please call the roll for voting? Just do a simple, like, all in favor, all opposed.
What is the vote on?
Just approving the agenda.
All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? And the ayes have it.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I open the floor to opening remarks. Would any representative like the floor? Okay. No representative would like the floor for opening remarks. The chair would like to make a short comment. Well, I called you all here today, obviously, to talk about, like I've said multiple times, last night's events, but also to discuss the direction in which our Supreme Court is headed and the steps we can take as members of the House of Representatives to correct that course. That's about it. So, I now open the floor to... Oh, sorry. I believe Representative Anubis has just joined us now. Would the clerk please take note of that?
Yeah, and I would also like to take note, or inform the speaker that since 10 representatives are present, there can be a vote conducted on an impeachment if the House so chooses, and would require everyone in this body currently to vote in favor to pass.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. The chair has made a notion of that. Anyways, now, before we start on the actual debate, I'd just like to make clear that does every representative here know fully of last night's actions, what happened, what led up to it, and why we're here today? No? Okay. I would also like to make note that Representative Weeb also chatted, saying no, he is not aware. So, very quickly, I will give you a rundown of basically what happened. So, last night, I believe it was, and Mr. Clerk, please feel free to correct me or, help me out because my memory is not that clear. But I believe it was Justice Paterson who submitted a petition to the Supreme Court on a bill of some sort. Am I right, Terrence?
It was the founder, James Clemens.
It was the founder, I'm sorry. It was the founder. He submitted a petition to the Supreme Court on which bill was it?
It was, it was the Senate Confirmations Bill, and essentially what he was saying is that the Senate Confirmations Bill said that a vice presidential nominee has to get 2/3, and that the Constitution says simple majority, and then he wanted to see that there are certain things that the Supreme Court has original jurisdiction over in terms of judicial review and stuff like that.
Right. So that simple question turned more into, well, does the founder even have the right to be submitting petitions into the Supreme Court? Because Justice, I believe it was Justice Jones who first brought up the question of original jurisdiction and also whether or not the founder can be classified as a citizen along with the overseers. So, in pursuant to that, the Supreme Court handed down a ruling that basically said that the overseers and the founder are not citizens of the United States and therefore cannot come to the Supreme Court with legal questions. And the controversy arose when partway through the majority opinion, Justices Paterson, Justice, I believe it was Webster, and Justice Jones decided to cite the Dred Scott decision from IRL as part of their reasoning as to why Jones and the founder are not considered citizens, and the founder and I believe the architect Pierre took that as the Supreme Court was likening them to slaves. So,
did it appear that way?
I'm sorry?
I have a question. I thought it was not a ruling.
It was a ruling.
Did it appear that way, that they weren't being treated as slaves?
Now, what I can do is I can get you all a transcript of the ruling, and we can take like 2 to 3 minutes to read over the majority opinion, and so that everyone has an idea of what we're talking about, and we can all formulate our opinions on it. How does that sound all right to every representative?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Mr. Clerk, would it be possible to get a copy of last night's ruling?
Sure, let me go find it.
Thank you.
I think I would have to look in my recent Google Drive openings or something.
Sure, I've got it.
Okay.
I'm submitting the ruling in the session discussion chat, and I ask all representatives to open it and give it a quick read.
Hold on. What was the petition that James wanted to submit it about anyways?
James wanted to submit a petition that, according to the improved Senate Confirmation Act, that act states that the Vice President has to be approved by 2/3 of the Senate, but the Constitution states that the Vice President need only be approved by a majority of the Senate. So he wanted the Supreme Court to rule on the issue since they're contradicting acts.
Could the Senate have done it themselves, or
What do you mean?
like change the rules, if that's possible?
Well, the Senate already passed a bill, Congress itself passed a bill stating that the Vice President has to be approved by 2/3 of the House, of the Senate. So the only way to fix this is now through the courts, unless someone in Congress writes a repeal of the Senate Improved Confirmation Act.
Okay.
So James decided, it'd be faster to go to the courts, and, the courts can make a decision.
Okay, I think a lot of people are wrong in this, and not just the Supreme Court justices. I don't think we should just impeach the justices for everyone being wrong in the situation.
Well, I'm not impeaching the justices based on last night's ruling, and I have drafted articles of impeachment, but once everyone is done reading over the ruling, let me know, and then we can move on to the articles itself.
But it is messed up, if I can make a point about this. Supreme Court justices comparing them to slaves, because I read that last night, and that was pretty messed up right there. They're not really slaves, and they do a lot for us, but they're not subhuman, and they are technically citizens.
Yeah, from yeah.
Is everyone done reading over the new ruling, the new majority opinion? I also ask that you guys read the minority opinion, which was, or the dissenting opinion, I should say, that was written by Chief Justice Hartson. And I believe just today, Justice Sima also issued a dissenting opinion.
There's Justice Sima's dissenting opinion.
Okay, can you send out Hartson's too?
It's in the same document. It's at the bottom of news.
Yeah, Hartson's opinion is in the ruling. It's at the bottom. While you're reading this, I'll just talk a little bit about what I personally thought of the whole affair. If you actually, and I speak from my own experience as both an associate justice on the court and chief justice, I've read both the assenting opinion, which is a majority opinion, and also the dissenting opinion, and I have to side with the dissenting side, because if you really look at it, man, Justice Sima really outlines a very strong argument for why the overseers and the founder are indeed citizens. And here, let me go in and read you really quickly what he said, because he made a very good point. He stated that give me 1 second. He stated that it is not the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court by Constitution or the laws of the United States to take citizenship away from someone, which is completely correct. And then he also stated that all 3 members of the overseer office, I guess we'll call it for ease, were at one point citizens of the United States. So if they were citizens of the United States at one point, then they retain that citizenship, because there is no process in which they could have their citizenship revoked. So what happened, in my opinion, with the majority of the Supreme Court was that they read the Constitution and they took it at face value. Because in the Constitution, it says that a citizen is someone who is under the jurisdiction of the United States. And if you think about it, yes, the overseers are not really under the jurisdiction of the United States. In fact, they're over the jurisdiction of the United States, which makes sense. And it would make sense to say that the founder and the overseers are not citizens of the United States if that were the case. If the only thing that we had was the Constitution and these guys never held public office. But because they did, they are, in fact, citizens of the United States. Because in order to run for president, by the way, of which 2 of these overseers were president, and in order to run for president, you have to be a citizen of the United States. So the fact that Terrence and James were at one point president proves that they were citizens when they ran for the presidency, and because you can't revoke someone's citizenship, it means that they are, in fact, citizens of the United States. So, in my opinion, the ruling handed down was completely bogus. And as far as the whole Dred Scott citation goes, I feel like that is just... First of all, Dred Scott, the Dred Scott case, I don't want to give the wrong date, so I will look it up right now. It was handed down in 1857. It was handed down in 1857, which is roughly, it's 160 years ago. Now, back in the 1800s and the 1700s, of course, slavery was legal, and it was commonplace to think that some races are inferior to, the Caucasian race, which is fine. I'm not saying that that was the thinking back then. That's fine. But since then, we have evolved so much, and we have issued decades of social reform to bring this country together. And now we have these certain justices sitting on the highest court in the land, unraveling all of that reform and all of that progress towards a more united country. So you really have to take a step back and ask yourself whether or not this is where we want our Supreme Court to be going. On top of this, Justice Paterson is very well known for his overreaching and cross-branch strong-arming, as he is the founder of the Republican Party, and he still tries to run the Republican Party with an iron fist and tries to persuade many congressmen to vote in a certain manner. And when you look at it, you think to yourself, well, if we're nominating people to the Supreme Court, don't you think that we should nominate people who are unbiased, who will look simply at the facts and do what is right for the American people instead of doing what is right for themselves? And on top of this, America was founded on the principle of pluralism, which means that we are willing to accept more than one idea. Justices like Justice Paterson and people like J.J. Rosie don't want that. They want to get rid of everyone that doesn't agree with them. And yes, at any point you're free to request the House floor. Don't think that you can't talk. I'm just talking because nobody else is saying anything. That's why I'm continuing. But it's just disgusting to see all of these archaic thoughts rising up now and shutting out so many minority opinions. And you really have to ask yourself: is that who we really want on our Supreme Court? That's all. Would any other representative like to join in on this?
I would. Representative Anubis from Mississippi.
Anubis, you have the floor.
I'd like to just add on to some stuff you said. I do believe there should be some action taken, because that is unacceptable, and that's not where I want our Supreme Court going. I'm sure it's not where nobody wants our Supreme Court going. Actually, last night I mentioned to someone, I said, the only reason why our country is going downhill because there's no motion for it and there's no spark is because we have people that are constantly dragging us down like this and constantly pushing us back. Every time we take a few steps forward, they knock us back way more than just a few steps back. They knock us even further back. And I've seen over time it has constantly been the Supreme Court. And not only that, but some of them are actually partly inactive. And I believe I've been sitting here thinking for a while. I've just been thinking, taking everything you're saying, just thinking. And I didn't want to impeach nobody because I like all those people on the Supreme Court. They're all my friends. They're all pretty close to me. I've known them for a long time. But for the sake of our country, I think impeachment would be the best option.
Thank you, Representative Anubis.
I request the floor.
Of course, Representative Yates, you have the floor.
So, obviously this last night's ruling was very controversial. I've heard many different criticisms of the ruling, one of which being that it's unconstitutional. And that one struck me as particularly odd because, as we all know, it's the Supreme Court's job to interpret the Constitution. So It's their job to say whether or not something's constitutional and interpret it as constitutional or unconstitutional. Dred Scott wasn't randomly cited in the ruling last night. As we know, our courts operate on precedent. And in the case of UCIS v. Guy Berner, which was someone, which was Guy Berner petitioning to determine whether he was an alt or not, because he was deemed an alt. Dred Scott was referenced in the majority opinion by Justice Reinhardt. And in the ruling last night, it doesn't just reference Dred Scott, it references it as it relates to the UCIS v. Guy Berner. So that's why it was referenced. I don't think they were making references to slaves, because if you read the Guy Berner opinion as well, they took the exact same wording from the Dred Scott decision as they did in the Guy Berner one. So as far as that goes, that's why they did that. Now, in regards to the impeachment, you know, I believe impeachments are supposed to go through the Judiciary Committee, mainly so that the articles drafted are, you know, every representative is in agreement as to why these people need to be impeached. You know, they can all put their grievances in an impeachment bill. Because the one up for a vote tonight, I don't think addresses, you know, many of the grievances, and in some cases, I think some of them are wrong. Specifically, the one that says, time and time again, these justices have proven that they're incapable of remaining impartial during trials. And it cites Justice Paterson having been a founding member of the Republican Party. But, you know, the question I like to pose is, when has him being the founder of the Republican Party ever led to an impartial decision on his behalf? You know, we passed the bill stating that members of the Supreme Court can't be in a party, or members of the court at all, not just the Supreme Court, any of the judicial. So that we didn't have an incident like that. We're basically taking preemptive action. But it hasn't happened in the past, as far as we know. If you look through the court docket, there hasn't been any you know, controversial decisions made by the Supreme Court. So I don't think that's a good example to cite in the impeachment. Justice Paterson haven't been a founder of the Republican Party. Maybe it is true that they have been impartial, but I don't think that's good evidence to prove that. And that's why I'd also like a committee hearing on this, you know, so we can question them, question others to find out what's going on. The other two reasons are, time and time again, these justices have been seen spewing bigoted and racist commentary throughout the USA channels, which I'm not really seeing much of. You know, it cites the Dred Scott decision as the evidence for that claim, but like I said, they're only just ruling on precedent, which is really what the court does.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt, Representative Gatsby, but you told me that you just said that you have not seen racist and bigoted comments in the use of Discord. I'm sorry, do you even look at the Discord? It's full of it. I mean,
it goes far beyond the justices, and honestly, to the best of my recollection, I don't recall any of the justices specifically standing out in that. Mostly everyone does it, but if I think of the people who are most notorious, none of the justices up for impeachment tonight come to mind.
And those justices are influenced by those people, heavily influenced by those people who stand out the most. Heavily influenced.
Can you cite an example of that?
Well, I don't know. What about former Justice Reinhardt, for example?
Go on.
What do you want me to do, Gatsby? You want me to scroll through the million chats and the use of Discord and, you know, find a specific example?
But you like I said, I want this to go to committee so we can all put our grievances down. I mean, this who is the sponsor? Who's Charles? Whoever.
He's the Senate Majority Leader.
What's his username, please?
It's I believe Fighter A's.
All right. So what I'm saying is, I would want this to go through committee so that we can all put our grievances in, rather than just you and Charles. I don't know how many of those 3 points were yours and how many were his, but you know, okay, you brought up a good point on the racist one, but the impartial one, my point still stands. If we jump to the third one, time and time again, these justices have failed to present clear-cut knowledge on the procedures there's no evidence lacked other than there's no evidence cited other than you put it can be attested by several former chief justices. That's why, again, if we go through a committee hearing, we can question these former justices and hear it ourselves. I mean, no offense, but
no, none taken.
I don't think just putting it in there is good enough. I think we should hear it for ourselves.
Yeah, I'm all for that, and that's why I called tonight's session to get.
So I would like this to go through a committee hearing because I don't think what happened last night is an impeachable offense on its own. The Supreme Court did its job. They interpreted the Constitution. That's their job. Whether you like it or not, that's their interpretation of it. Do I agree with their interpretation? No, but they did their job. That's what they do. And obviously it doesn't say in here based on the ruling last night. That's why they're for impeachment, because that wouldn't fly. You have 3 reasons, but I think they're lacking some clarification, some evidence, specifically the impartial one and the failure to present clear-cut knowledge. And I would argue the racist one, but you seem to have counter-argument, which I'd like to hear, and specifically in committee. That's all I have to say. I yield the floor.
Are you then making a motion to put?
Oh yeah, and I motion to take this bill, these articles of impeachment off the agenda and move them to the House Judiciary Committee.
Well, I believe we're going to,
or the Ethics
Leader
Committee.
Mike. Yep, the Ethics Committee. Do I hear a second to this motion to move the articles of impeachment to the Ethics Committee?
Second the motion.
We'll now take a very quick vote on whether or not we want to move the articles of impeachment off the agenda and into committee. Clerk?
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
That was in favor, but in the opinion of the chair, or the clerk, the ayes have it.
Very well. The impeachment, the resolution to impeach Justices Salvatore Paterson, Logan Webster, and Martin P. Jones will be moved off the agenda and into the Ethics Committee. I believe over the next few days, the Ethics Committee will be calling in many witnesses and also getting testimony from all branches of government in order to develop a more clear cut picture of what has happened and whether or not we should move forward with the articles of impeachment. Was there anything else any other representative wanted to say?
I motion to adjourn.
I second the motion.
Very well, we'll take a very quick vote on whether or not we wish to adjourn.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And the ayes have it.
Very well. That brings our emergency session to a close. I'd like to thank all of the representatives and everyone watching for joining us, and I hope that over the next few days we can come to a better understanding of what has happened and whether or not we need to move to impeach these 3 justices. Thank you very much and good night.